before we start the video, I'd like to ask you guys to please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video, as it helps the channel grow. So, let's get into it. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing our MLB series on the channel. Today we will be going through the NL East, ranking the teams in the NL East from top to bottom and everything in between. As you can see on the screen, I will be using a multitude of sources, including the Pacoda projection standings. I'll also be using some zip projection standings and some off-season trackers. This division is definitely one of the more interesting divisions in baseball, as it is kind of top-heavy, with 3 of the 5 teams definitely being able to win the division if everything goes right for them. But I'm going to shut up talking. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me with another presentation with your boy KT. Thank you for taking a little bit of time out your day to spend a little time with me. Today we'll be doing the NL East, and we'll be going through the NL East, analyzing each team in the NL East and ranking them accordingly. This is a division that's definitely going to be one of the more competitive divisions, especially from the top 3 teams in this division. We're doing pretty good with these MLB videos. We are nearly 2 weeks away from opening day, unofficial opening day, when the Chicago Cubs open up the season in Japan when they face the Los Angeles Dodgers. So I want to try to get these videos out before then, but the official opening day is on the 27th. So yeah, we're gonna try to get this done before that date. As you can see, as I said before, multitude of sources that I'm going to be using. Yeah, let's get straight into it with our first team coming in at number 5. All right, at number 5 we have the Miami Marlins, and the Miami Marlins are an interesting team to say the least. They're going to be pretty bad this year, that's without a doubt. But this is a team that can definitely get some pieces for some of the pieces that they have on the team right now. Now, the Miami Marlins used to be a team that had a good young core connected with it. You know, guys like Giancarlo Stanton, a prime Giancarlo Stanton, Marcell Ozuna, Christian Yelich, those years where they seemed like that outfield was just one of the strongest outfields in the MLB. As years have passed, though, the Miami Marlins have let go of guys. They let go of Jazz Chisholm last year to let him go to the Yankees. They've been consistently letting guys go for the past few years, and that continued up into this year. This team is just devoid of just top-end talent other than the pitching staff, especially in the lineup. This team is definitely going to be bad. Now, they didn't do much in the offseason either. I think the only thing they added in the offseason was Cal Quantrill and Albert Almora Jr. And those were the 2 big, I guess you can say they're big acquisitions for the offseason. And those guys probably are not going to be big contributors to the lineup or to the pitching staff. Now, I do like Cal Quantrill. I think he is a good young pitcher that you can still mold into stuff. Sandy Alcantara is still one of the best pitchers in the NL East and could possibly be the most underrated pitcher in the league. But when healthy, you can sneak out games with him. The only problem is when is he ever completely healthy? And he could be a possible trade candidate this year. Edward Cabrera, definitely another guy that could take over from Jesus Luzardo, who left for the Phillies this past offseason. As I put the Zips projection on the screen, they still have him on there. Just know that Jesus Luzardo is no longer on the team. He's a good, interesting pitching prospect on that team. A guy who has a lot of velocity. A guy who has some good movement in his pitches, but he could possibly be a guy that could take over that starter 1 spot if Sandy Alcantara is traded. The main thing with this Marlins team is their lineup is just doesn't have anything in it. If I ask a Marlins fan, other than Jesus Sanchez and maybe División de los Santos, who is playing on the Miami Marlins this year, they probably wouldn't be able to tell you. This team has lost pieces in the offseason in the lineup. Jake Burger went to the where did he go? I think he went to the Twins or Indians. I can't remember. I can't remember. It was he left the team in the offseason. I can't remember which team he left for. But Jake Berger's gone. They got rid of Vidal Brujan. He went to the Cubs. They traded Vidal Brujan for Matt Mervis, who they now have playing first base. Now we'll see if they can get something out of Matt Mervis. He was a former top 10 prospect in the Cubs organization. But it's up until this point, Matt Mervis hasn't showed much. But hey, maybe a new place could work out just as well as, hey, it seems like it's working for Vidal Brujan in spring training. Yeah, but other than Jesus Sanchez, I can't name a guy in this lineup that's going to give a lot of boost to this offense other than Davison de los Santos, and he's kind of limited, if I do say so myself. This team is probably going to be really, really bad, so just get ready, Marlins fans. This team is cheap. It's time for ownership or whatever, GM. They've been firing GMs like crazy. It's time for something to change in this team. They got to be able to attract free agents. They play in the great city of Miami. There's no reason why they can't attract free agents. This team is notoriously cheap. They don't have many top prospects coming to the league anytime soon. This team is going to be pretty bad. I say that around the 60-win mark is definitely correct. This team is going to be carried by its pitching staff early, and I really think that they're going to be looking to move some pieces to get prospects, get picks and stuff like that to this team. Other than that, the Miami Marlins are definitely going to be one of the worst teams in the league. They keep letting talent go. They didn't do anything really in the offseason, and they're definitely a team that has pieces that are going to be moved before the trade deadline this year. So the Miami Marlins are definitely going to be the worst team in the NL East. All right, coming in at number 4, we have the Washington Nationals. And this is a team that I'm actually interested in watching this year, as they have a lot of young, ascending talent on this team that's definitely going to be exciting in the next few years. Now, with that being said, the Washington Nationals didn't really do much in the offseason in terms of a few moves. They were able to sign Paul DeYoung to a 1-year contract. They got Shinosuke Ogasawara to a 2-year contract. They were able to keep Trevor Williams for another year. They agreed with Kyle Finnegan as well. So they didn't really have too much of a huge offseason. They also got Josh Bell. He came back to the Washington Nationals. Ahmed Rosario is going to the Washington Nationals. They signed Michael Soroka. So they did some things in the offseason. Not big star-studded moves, but I don't think they really need to make those big moves like that. And they also did make a trade with the Texas Rangers in the offseason as well. They went out and got first baseman Nathaniel Lowe. That's going to be a big acquisition for them. I think so. Guy with a lot of power in his bat. Definitely having a stronger spring training as of now. This team definitely has some good pieces on it. Mackenzie Gore at the starting, starter 1 position. He had a strong year last year. Let's see if he could keep it up. I'm really excited to see DJ Hers and what he's able to do in this starting rotation. We'll see how he looks in this year. But hey, this is a guy that can definitely turn into a good starting pitcher. Only 24 years old. Had an okay year last year. Let's see if he can continue to improve. They signed Jake Irvin in the offseason. Ogasawara could be a starting pitcher if they need him to. They also got Mike Soroka. Trevor Williams had a really, really, really strong year last year. I always liked Trevor Williams, but it's always something about his health that he can never really stay healthy like that. They got a deep starting rotation. They can take guys in and out the rotation when needed. Strong bullpen when they signed Kyle Finnegan to be their closer. Derek Laws, their setup man. So they definitely got some good pieces on the pitching staff. I think the strength of their team is definitely their lineup, because they have a lot of young ascending pieces on this lineup. K-Bert Rees, definitely a guy that's going to get some time at the catcher position. They went out and got Nate Lowe. Ahmed Rosario was a good acquisition for them. I think the 2 big guys that I'm looking forward to watching this year is CJ Abrams, as I think he had a strong year 2 years ago, but he kind of had a struggle last year. But let's see. I think he's a little bit more focused this year. He made some adjustments. Let's see if he can continue his path to stardom, as he was talked about as one of the better shortstops in the league. I'm excited for James Wood, man. I think he's definitely going to be a big player for the Washington Nationals. I see him, turning into like an all-star caliber player. He was a top prospect for them, top prospect in all of baseball. I think James Wood is definitely one of the better players on that team. And if he continues to develop on what he was a strong rookie year, look out for this dude out there in left field. They went out and got Josh Bell. Andres Chaparro could be a guy that could provide some production in that lineup. Alex Call is definitely going to be one of the guys that I'm looking forward to, and Jacob Young as well. If he can continue off what was a strong season for him, that would be great for them as well. As for young prospects, they have Dylan Cruz, who's definitely expected to make his debut at some point during the 2025 season, if he isn't already up in the big leagues. This is a strong team, man. This is a strong young team that has a lot of talent on it from top to bottom. It's young, it's ascending. They need time to develop, so they're probably not going to do much in the division, but they can definitely be an exciting team to watch. The Washington Nationals have been a team where after they won that World Series, it's kind of gone downhill. They've had players go in and out. They lost Juan Soto. It's just they could definitely be a team where I could see, hey, in the next few years with all that young talent that they got developing, and all that pitching staff developing, those young batters developing, they got good prospects on the team. In a couple years, I definitely think they could be a team to be reckoned with in the NL East. My thing is that they're just not there yet compared to the other teams in the division who just have top end talent from top to bottom. I just think they're just not there just yet. But give them a couple years, and this team could definitely do some damage in the NL East, especially once the teams in front of them start to get older and the guys that they sign start to decline. So I think the Washington Nationals will be the fourth best team in the NL East. I think they could win about 70 games this year. I think 67 is a little low. I think their pitching staff and some of their players like CJ Abrams and James Wood would be a little bit better this year and could carry them to some good wins. But definitely, I think the Washington Nationals, while they'll be the fourth team, in the division this year, I still think that they're, a young, exciting team that could definitely be really, really good in the next few years. All right, this is where it starts to get a little tricky. At number 3, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say the New York Mets are going to finish third in the division. Now, with that being said, third in the division could be anything between 90 wins to 95 wins. Now, this New York Mets team, this is where it gets tricky because this division is top heavy, and this New York Mets team reloaded on talent in the offseason. Let me bring up there. Of course, the biggest acquisition they had, obviously, was Juan Soto, one of the best players in baseball, if not the best player in baseball in many people's opinion. That was the biggest signing for them in the entire offseason was Juan Soto. They also was able to go out and get Frankie Montas, a guy who could really shore up that starting rotation. AJ Minter, good bullpen pitcher. Jose Urena, another starting pitcher. They went out and got Adbert Alzolay, something to add to the bullpen. Jared Young out there in the outfield. They got some pieces in the offseason, man. They re-signed Pete Alonso, and that was a big thing. I didn't even know Pete Alonso was a free agent at the time, but they were able to re-sign him, so they're going to keep his production on that team. If you ask me, man, this Mets team could definitely be in play to win the division. They have a good starting pitching staff: Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, David Peterson, Frankie Montas, Paul Blackburn. You could go down the list of the starters that they have on the team. Plus, they're probably going to get a healthy Edwin Diaz. They got Reed Garrett to be their setup man. They signed Ryan Stanek. They got AJ Minter. They signed him in the offseason. So it's stacked from top to bottom. And when you look at their lineup as well, they got some good pieces there as well. Francisco Alvarez playing catcher, the aforementioned Pete Alonso playing first base. I put the Zips projection on the screen. They don't have him on there, but he is back with the Mets, so keep that in mind. You still got Jeff McNeil. Hopefully he regains his form. Backing him up is Luis Angel Acuna, another guy that could be productive in the lineup. Two good third basemen in Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty. Francisco Lindor is the lone shortstop, but definitely had a strong year last year. Brandon Nimmo, another guy that had a strong year last year. They went out and got Jose Siri, Jared Young. They also went out and got him. Of course, the aforementioned Juan Soto. Starling Marte is on the team. If he continues his production in New York, that's going to be a good move. They went out and got Jesse Winker. If he's able to return to the form that he had with the Reds, I'd be happy with that move. I think the only thing I'm concerned about with the New York Mets is, the New York Mets always kind of get overrated anyway because they play in New York and they got a lot of top-end talent and they spend a lot of money in the offseason. But as previously mentioned, health continues to be a struggle, especially for that starting pitching staff. Sean Manaea is already hurt, and the regular season hasn't even started yet. Now, with that being said, Frankie Montas is probably going to miss games. I don't think Kodai Senga is going to play all 162 games either. So this starting pitching staff can be their blessing and can also be their curse. There's no way I think this pitching staff is going to be able to play 162 games altogether. Sean Manaea is already hurt. And with that being said, with Zips, being kind of down on Sean Manaea a little bit, because they lost Seth Lugo in the offseason last year, and they don't have much faith in Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea being top end starting pitchers. I think they're good starting pitchers, but other than Kodai Senga, a guy who could possibly stay a little bit healthy for a little bit longer, they don't really have much in that starting pitching category like top end talent. And with Sean Manaea already hurt, they're gonna have to work around that. Couple that with their banking their lineup on a lot of guys producing this year that are probably going to regress. There's no guarantee that Mark Vientos is going to continue his hot streak from last year. There's no guarantee that Brandon Nimmo is going to continue his hot streak from last year. Are you going to get that same production from Starling Marte? Is Francisco Lindor going to revert back into the Lindor when they first got him? There's a lot of, are you going to get something out of Pete Alonso now that he's been re-signed? Is he upset with the contract he got? There's a lot of questions in that New York Mets lineup. The only question I don't have is the Juan Soto signing. I think the Juan Soto signing makes them better, but they got to figure out, man, some questions going to need to be answered this season. Can these guys like Mark Vientos, Brandon Nimmo, Starling Marte, the guys like that, Jeff McNeil, all those guys, can they continue to live up to expectations and perform at a high level? So this team can be able to compete for a playoff spot and maybe even with Juan Soto compete for a World Series. I personally think that the New York Mets are probably going to be one of the better teams in this division. I think that by me putting him at third, it's just showing how tough the division is. I still like Atlanta a little bit better, and we're going to get to Philadelphia a little bit later in this video. But definitely, I think the Mets are going to be right there with them, with Atlanta, with Philadelphia, competing for that division. There's just some questions that I need to see answered once we get to the regular season. Can this team stay healthy, and can they continue to get production out of those key spots or those players that I mentioned earlier? So definitely, it was a great offseason for the Mets. Hopefully, it pays off for them, as they are definitely one of the teams that could compete in that division, get a playoff spot, and could possibly compete for the World Series. All right, coming in at number 2, we have the Atlanta Braves. And for the Atlanta Braves, last year was a season that was a little off for them, a year filled with injuries, to their core pieces. And this year can prove to be a better year for them now that everybody's pretty much healthy on that Braves team. Their offseason was a bit hit or miss. They lost a couple pieces in the offseason. Charlie Morton left. Max Fried, who was one of their best starting pitchers, left for the New York Yankees. AJ Minter went to the aforementioned New York Mets. They lost Gio Urshela. They lost a couple bullpen pitchers as well. But they did end up, getting some guys back as well. Aaron Bummer came to this team as well. They signed Jurickson Profar, which is one of the better signings that I think so far. Brian De La Cruz, a young player who can definitely add some value to the DH role. He also signed in the offseason. Wander Cerro comes in to be a relief pitcher, only to a minor league contract though. They signed Hector Neris to replace AJ Minter. They also signed Jake Dykman in the offseason. Jake Marisnick, the speedy outfielder, is definitely going to be Jake Marisnick is definitely going to be another piece that could be a depth piece for them. So it was an up and down, mixed off season for them. They lost a couple pieces, but they did kind of replace them as well. They were able to keep a couple pieces like Aaron Bummer and Griffin Canning. But you just look at this Atlanta Braves team, and when healthy, this could definitely be one of the best teams in the MLB. Chris Sale leading the lineup, the starting rotation. He'd probably be splitting time for that ace starter spot with Spencer Strider, who, when healthy, is one of the better pitchers in all of baseball. Spencer Schwellenbach had a strong year last year, as well with Ronaldo Lopez, who that was his first year as a first-year starter, as a full-time starter, and he definitely showed out last year, being one of the better pitchers on that team, especially when Spencer Strider went out. So their starting rotation is set. I'm a little worried about the bullpen. They did lose AJ Minter in the offseason, and I don't know how good Hector Neris and Jake Dykman are going to be, if they even make the team. But they still have Raciel Iglesias, who is their closer. Aaron Bummer is still there to be the setup man somewhat. He'll split time with Pierce Johnson as well to be that setup man. But I think the strength in this team lies in their lineup. Now, a couple caveats. Sean Murphy just went out with an injury, so that probably means Drake Baldwin or Chadwick Trump will probably get the start at that catcher position. If you ask me, I think Drake Baldwin is definitely going to get that start. They did lose Travis d'Arnaud, but with Baldwin and Trump out there, those guys are more than serviceable. Matt Olson, if he's fully healthy, is a guy who can hit for 40 plus home runs. You still have Ozzie Albies, again, if healthy. Definitely a guy who can get on base a lot, add some speed and some good defense at that second base position. I want to see if Austin Riley can continue off a strong year 2 years ago. I want to see if he can get back to that point where people were really, really high on Austin Riley, a guy with a lot of power, a guy who plays the hot corner pretty well at third base. I do think their shortstop position is a little bit underwhelming. I'm not the biggest fan of Rolando Arcia. I was not a big fan of him when they let go of Dansby Swanson, who's now the Chicago Cub. But I guess Arcia is okay if you can get the same production with your bat as you can from Dansby Swanson. That could be a little bit stronger. They went out and signed Jurickson Profar, which is one of the better moves of their offseason, as I think he had a pretty strong year last year, and I think he will probably continue off of that. Michael Harris, the second man, that dude is an absolute monster, especially in the field, and his bat is starting to get a little bit better as well. Not many people talk about Michael Harris the second being one of the better center fielders in the game, especially on defense, but he's definitely here to stay. The main thing that this season is going to ride on is the production of Ronald Acuna Jr. and him being able to stay healthy. Now, you're probably saying, hey, the Mets have that same issue too, and their lineup might be a little bit better. I don't think so, but with Ronald Acuna Jr., we see when he's in the lineup, that team is 10 times better than with him in that lineup. Now, the thing is that Ronald Acuna Jr. can never stay healthy. He always starts the season well, and then halfway through the beginning part of the season, he suffers some season-ending injury, like he always does. And if he's not healthy, then that team is definitely going to go nowhere. But at the same time, with their starting rotation being healthy, starting off the year healthy, it's definitely going to carry them in these games. Brian De La Cruz could definitely add some power to the lineup. You still have Marcell Ozuna, who's probably going to DH for you. A guy who, again, is going to add at least 25 home runs to the lineup. So this Braves team is definitely one of the better teams in the division. Again, they're going to be right there with the Mets and the Phillies in terms of competing for the top crown in the division. I really think that the loss of Sean Murphy is going to hurt them a little bit. But if you're getting that production from Matt Olson, Ronald Acuna Jr. stays healthy, you get that production that you need from Austin Riley. Spencer Strider is able to regain his form and stay healthy. You're still going to have Reynaldo Lopez, even though he's probably going to take a step back. He still is going to be a pretty good option for your starting pitching staff. Hopefully Chris Sale can stay healthy for more in the game. It's definitely a strong team if they're able to stay healthy, and I don't think Atlanta is going to be, down in the dumps much longer. I think if this is the year they're going to stay healthy, this is the year they're going to be able to compete for the division. But yeah, man, it's the same thing with the Mets. They're going to be probably alternating that 1 and 2 spot, if I'm being honest. It's the same thing with the Mets. They're asking a lot of questions that need to be answered, especially with health and production. I just feel like the Braves question marks, especially in their lineup, are less prominent than the ones in the Mets. As you know, you're going to get some type of production from Olsen, Albies, Riley, and Ronald Acuna. You brought in Jurickson Profar. Michael Harris II tends to get a little bit better, and he's getting better every single year. What production you're going to get from Marcell Ozuna. So they have a lot of more, set in stone type of things on this team. It's just more about, can this team stay healthy rather than the guys just regressing outright. So I like the Braves a little bit better than the Mets. I think they'll finish second in the division. This lineup is definitely going to carry the team, in my opinion. So we'll see, man. We'll see. I do like this Braves team. I think they're going to be going back and forth with the Mets and the Phillies all year. Dakota has them winning the division. I don't think so, and we're going to get to that next. But yeah, the Atlanta Braves are definitely a team, when healthy, is dangerous. They've won a World Series before. They've made deep playoff runs. I think this team is going to finish second in the NL East. And finally, at number 1, the team that will win the NL East is the Philadelphia Phillies. And I know that sounds pretty shocking to a lot of people watching this video, but hear me out. Do not sleep on this Phillies team at all. It seems like every time somebody sleeps on this Phillies team, they shock everybody and they make a deep run in the playoffs. They get to the NLCS, or they even get to the World Series. This team here I think is stacked from top to bottom, man. They got a lot of good acquisitions. They didn't lose much in the offseason. I mean, the loss of Jeff Hoffman might cost them a little bit, but they definitely did their due diligence, and they replaced them with 2 other closers as well. They're a deep team, man. They're a deep team. The addition, I think their biggest addition in the offseason was Jesus Luzardo, in which they acquired via trade. I think that was a damn good move for them, as it just beefs up that already good starting rotation. Another good move that they made was the acquisition of Max Kepler. I think that's definitely going to be a good move for them as well. Add some depth in that outfield. Still relatively serviceable player in his own right. Never really lived up to what I thought he was going to be. But I digress. Jordan Romano was a guy that I think was a good signing in the offseason as well. So they did a lot of things. They didn't do too much in the offseason, but they definitely revamped a few things. I think their pitching staff is definitely one of their biggest strengths. Zach Wheeler is projected to be the ace on PECOTA. I don't know if he's probably going to split time at that starter 1 spot with Aaron Nola. I think Zach Wheeler is a little bit better than Nola, in my opinion. The way he's able to change speeds, he had a really strong year last year. If he's healthy, he's one of the best pitchers in the league. Jesus Luzardo, again, a guy, if healthy, is one of the better pitchers in the league. He got him from Miami. He was a good part of that Miami rotation. I really wanted the Chicago Cubs to get him, but that never happened. Ranger Suarez had a good year last year as well. Taijuan Walker as a guy who can start games for you. Like I said, they were able to get Jordan Romano to be their closer. He'll probably split time with Jose Alvarado, Matt Strahm. They got a good setup pitcher, or setup pitcher, or maybe he can even close games as well. Their bullpen is nice, even though they lost some pieces. It's still pretty nice, and I think their starting rotation should be more than good enough to carry them to be able to win games and to limit runs getting on the board. I think the biggest strength of this team, though, is their lineup. JT Realmuto is still there. They signed Garrett Stubbs in the offseason. Bryce Harper, who's now playing first base, never underestimate the Harper, man. That dude is a beast. He starts the year kind of slow, but as the year progresses, he just turns it on. And that's one of the main reasons why this Phillies team is always in a competitive nature and in competition for making World Series and making deep playoff runs, is because Bryce Harper is just that guy. Bryson Stott is a guy that's probably going to have a big year at that second base position. Alec Bohm had a really, really strong year at that third base position last year. Really took a big step forward. Is one of the better third basemen in the league, if you ask me. I think he's underrated. Trey Turner, who's now going to be leading off for them, I think that's a good move for them. Having him lead off with his speed, shows a little bit of power, good contact, is able to play a little bit of defense as well. I think he's definitely a big acquisition for them, and it has been a big acquisition ever since he's came to the Phillies. The aforementioned Max Kepler, who will be splitting time probably with Brandon Marsh, who had a really, really strong year last year. I didn't think Brandon Marsh was that good of a player, but he definitely showed out last year. I don't know what happened to the Phillies in the playoffs, but they still got, Nick Castellanos, a guy who's always going to get on base, who's going to hit home runs at some of the most inopportune moments. And the memes that come out of Nick Castellanos is, home runs be funny, or not really funny, but just he always seems to homer around the most dire of times, if you get my drift. And of course, you have Kyle Schwarber, a guy who's either going to home run, strike out, or take a walk. One or the other, man. This guy is either going to hit a home run or he's going to strike out. This is a guy in Kyle Schwarber who can hit like 212 and have 42 home runs on the season. So, this team is definitely one of the better teams in the NL East. I think people are kind of underestimating them with them going out getting Luzardo, the continued production of Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. Ranger Suarez had a strong year last year. They got Taijuan Walker. Joe Ross can start games for you. They replaced Hoffman with Romano, who's a pretty good closer. He'll be splitting time with Alvarado. You still got that good lineup of Harper, Bohm, and Castellanos and Schwarber. I think this team is definitely better than what people give it credit for. The only thing I might be concerned about is this team is getting a little older, man. These guys are getting a little bit older. They're not getting any younger. But I definitely think this Phillies team is definitely being underestimated. And I feel like when they're underestimated, they always do something crazy and they end up making a run. I feel like Bryce Harper is going to be one of the better players in the league, of course. I feel like Alec Bohm is going to continue to build off his strong season last year. You're still going to get that same production from Nick Castellanos and Kyle Schwarber. I think this team is definitely going to be one of the better teams in the NL East. I definitely think it's going to be one of the better teams in Major League Baseball. And I could definitely see them winning that division. Now, I don't think they'll just win it outright. There's a lot of good teams in that NL East. You got the Braves and the Mets sitting right there, so they're probably going to be swapping places with them all season. But when I said this division was top heavy, it is. These are the three teams that are definitely going to be making a run at the division and trying to make a deep run in the playoffs. I think the Phillies have just as good of a chance as anyone. I think people are underestimating them. I think their lineup is strong, and I think their pitching staff is strong, and that's going to carry them once the season starts. It's deep. They have guys that can give you multiple different ways that they can hurt you. They get production from these guys. I think the Phillies are definitely going to be a team to watch. And in my personal opinion, I think the Phillies are going to win the division. But anyways, guys, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you agree or disagree with any of the choices that I made? Let me know in the comment section. The NL East is definitely one of the more interesting divisions in baseball, man. It's top heavy. 3 of those 5 teams that could definitely win the division and make a deep playoff run. So the division is up for grabs, in my opinion. There's just not one team that's going to dominate that division. So we'll see once the season comes around. But yeah, I'm gonna get up out of here, guys. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video, as it helps the channel grow. Make sure you guys hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I drop one of these MLB videos. The next video will probably be about the NL Central, and how my Chicago Cubs are probably going to dominate it this year. But yeah, be looking out for that. Leave your comment in the comment section. Follow me on social media, as there's bound to be tons of discussion going on social media. And as always, guys, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And I'm out. Peace.